Got Karen Kidwell that joined us. Miss Robin Haybear. We're Skyped in. And there's Dr. Ellis. Good morning, Dr. Ellis. Got some sound issues.
Good morning. How are you all?
Good morning. We are doing good. We're sitting here with approximately 80 to 90 principals throughout the GRREC region, and they are very excited for you, along with your colleagues, to join in this morning and give us some information on the forecast of education in Kentucky. We have been generating some questions. We don't know that we'll get to those questions today, but if not, we'll certainly email those questions to you for you to get a chance to respond, and you and Dr. Pruitt collaborate to get us some answers that may be some hot topics for our principals here in the GRREC region.
That'd be great. Well, first of all, thank you for having us, and I'm so sorry I'm not there in person. I'm not a virtual person. I'm usually face-to-face, but things have been a little busy here in Frankfort, to say the least, and so thank you for having us. I do want to let you know who's on the line. Also with us is I have two of my directors actually with me. Robin Hebert is online, and she is the director over Next Gen Professionals, which houses PGES, the Equity Plan, Title II, Teacher Leadership, so on and so forth. So I thought she would be a great resource to have on. And I also have Karen Kidwell, who's sitting next to me, and we'll move the camera so you can kind of see Karen. But Karen is, of course, the director over Program Standards, which is our standards, program reviews, early childhood, what am I missing? Math science partnerships, you name it. It's pretty much in Karen's office. So we're hoping to be able to answer your questions to the best of our abilities as from what we know currently. Apologize that Dr. Pruitt couldn't be here today. His calendar is ridiculous, as well as you probably can imagine, and he was really bummed he couldn't be on and said he would love to catch up the next time you guys are all together. So we're very open to questions, and if we don't get to all of them, please feel free to email them to us, and we can provide written responses for you all to anything that has not been addressed.
So, GRREC principals, at this time, I ask for individual questions that you'd like to address to the Associate Commissioner, Dr. Ellis, or her colleagues. Johnston, will you start us?
I will. We have a program review audit March the 7th. And then we're told program reviews may be going away, so I'm not sure what the point of a March 7th audit would be.
Sure. Hi, this is Karen Kidwell. I am happy to address that. We just want to remind you that the purpose of the program review audits right now is all about program improvement. So I'm sure no one would disagree that regardless of the status of accountability or not accountability, the ability to provide excellent opportunities for your students is at the top of everyone's list of concerns. And so the program review audit is fully intended to help calibrate the expectations that your own staff may have against the standards for a quality program and give feedback on how you can actually have a continuous improvement model in place to improve those programs. So it would be our hope that should anything in fact change, the information you would get from this audit experience would still be absolutely relevant and beneficial in improving your program for all students.
And just to add to that as well is, as you all are aware, Senate Bill 1 that you're probably referring to, if it's going to be there or not, or even ESSA, with Senate Bill 1, as you all know, it has passed through the Senate, but it has not been picked up by the House at this point in time. So everything stays as is until we have to make changes to the assessment and accountability system, which would take place in 2017 regardless, due to the Every Student Succeeds Act that was signed in December. And so we would not hesitate on moving forward with program improvement or doing what we would expect all schools and districts to do, is to continue to move the work forward and provide best opportunities for students. We certainly wouldn't want a legislative session to prohibit the movement of schools, because you all certainly don't sit and wait, and we know that. And so we fully are dedicated to providing support, service, and leadership for you all. So that's where we are. But thank you for the question.
Next question. Stephanie Martin, what's a burning question for you and Jody Richards Elementary?
I would say kindergarten readiness with grants showing that less than 50% of our students are coming to us ready at most Kentucky schools. How we're going to close that gap and continue to do that if there's preschool decrease in funding.
Go ahead.
Let me make sure that I captured the question. I think what we heard, Amanda and I are just having a little bit of a hard time hearing, is that you started with saying, given that generally 50% of students are screening as ready to learn, ready to grow, ready to succeed as they're entering kindergarten, as well as impending budget cuts for the preschool program, what will be our solution to continue to provide and actually enhance services to ensure more students are ready? Is that the question, basically?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I can tell you from our perspective here, we're looking at what will the next generation of early learning leadership networks look like for our state, especially now that we have a few years of data, that now that we know people are more familiar with the expectations for some of these basic skills and competencies and dispositions that we would want our youngest learners coming into kindergarten with. We're looking at how can we leverage the regional training centers along with our public schools to work together to build some learning teams to address some of the particular needs. While we can look at the data statewide, even item by item on that screener, we actually have a team right now that is looking at item by item and pulling research evidence, some strategies, practical strategies that we know are successful with our youngest learners. And so we're thinking about how can we then provide that support through our regional training centers, through other professional learning opportunities we'll have here, and perhaps through a new iteration of our early learning leadership networks, so that everybody has an opportunity to grow and particularly focus on those competencies that are determined to be critical to success in the primary program.
And to even add to that, also is our partnership is pretty strong with the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, because it deals a lot with children that birth to age 3 before they even reach our schools, and the importance of high quality daycare services or preschool outside of state-funded preschool, which is, out of our realm, but certainly we are a key partner into playing with that. So actually I spoke with Terry Tolan yesterday, who's the executive director, and they are very interested in using some of their dollars for the Race to the Top and partnerships across the state to also enhance training and support for daycare workers, and increasing even the requirements for even serving in a daycare setting or in a private preschool or any of those preschool settings, period. Knowing that the quality is just essential before they even reach us, and that the struggles and the gaps all begin very, very early on. And so that's something that Terry and her team are also working with us on, as well as the Cabinet of Family Health Services. They're a part of that with the Family Resource Center. So it's really a community action piece as well, of what we need to do to surround and support families with those early learners, definitely.
Dr. Ellis, we have a high school accountability question coming from Jennifer Pope from Todd Central High School.
Accountability question, is that what you said?
Career college readiness question.
Okay, if I don't know the answer, I will definitely find the answers for you and get back to you, but go ahead and I'll do my best.
Career college readiness continues to be a priority for us, but what are plans to replace Compass as it's going to be phased out in December of that coming year?
So you're talking about the phase, I just want to make sure I heard you because it is really hard to hear. The phase out of Compass, is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay, so that is a very good question actually for Rhonda. The thing that they are looking at right now is that with the ESSA we have more flexibility in what we will be able to do with our accountability system, assessment and accountability system. And so basically what they are starting to look at, and you're going to see come up at the end of March, 1st of April, Dr. Pruitt will be doing some state visits around the state. He'll be doing visits to get feedback because he is really interested in simplifying our accountability system and making it something that people can understand and explain, and it's not so complex that it becomes convoluted. So part of that is reviewing all the assessments in which we currently use for assessment and accountability and how those things are weighted. So really a lot of these things are on the table. I'll try to get a more specific if there is a transition answer for you on that, but really a lot of it is being looked at is a kind of an overhaul. Keeping the things that work really well and the things that aren't is our opportunity to get it right. And he's really looking for shareholder involvement and feedback on that. He is not wanting to do that behind closed doors, and so it's going to be the input of a lot of people to make this system right and do it well. That now's our opportunity. So I'll try to see if there's a specific answer, but right now we are in transition because we do know that the new accountability system has to be in place 2017-18. So that gives us a very tight timeline to establish a new system, which is why you're going to see the town hall meetings that are going to start the end of this month, and then the development will begin with many subcommittees that start to look at all parts of the accountability system. So it's not just tests, but all the pieces that put that balance system together. So long answer, short question, I know, I apologize, but I will follow up to see if there's any specific to a replacement on campus that Rhonda Sims may be able to offer. So I will definitely send that.
I have a question just real quickly around the safe schools subject. I know one of the things that's a burning topic with a lot of our parents is safety at schools in the light of today's society. So we see in this proposed budget that we've been handed that there's some cuts to safe schools money. Can you elaborate on what that's going to entail? Because a lot of us, I think, use that money in specific ways to ensure our parents that their kids are safe at school.
Are you referring to the proposed budget cuts to the Safe Schools funding piece? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so again, we're in a major flux right now because a lot of it's proposed. And so what's happening right now in Frankfurt is that there are several groups that are meeting with the Senate and the House of Representatives sharing the negative impact of any type of funding cut to safe schools or any of our education funding and what the unintended consequences could be. As you can imagine, everybody's volleying to keep their money, and we don't have anything that's a definite. So we don't have a good answer for you right now because we don't know if what the proposal that the governor laid out in January is going to stand or if that will be altered. We're just not certain, to be honest with you. And so I know that that several of our teams are working through what that would do. I do know that Dr. Pruitt is working really hard to make sure that the schools and districts have the least amount of impact, but it's going to be tough with if we had to do the 4.5% cut, which is about $17.9 million of our monies that come in to the agency, not for the agency, but really flow through the agency for different programs and things. That would be a really hard cut. Next year being $35 million if the proposed budget was approved, but it's really, really early. And there are 4 special elections that are going to take place on March 8th. And so there's still a lot of change and a lot of things. So we're just not certain at this point how to approach not knowing exactly what would be cut for sure and what would, because a lot of people have expressed so much concern. There's been a lot of back and forth on, well, maybe we should remove that or maybe we should add this. So I just don't think we know at this point what to share because nothing's really been decided. And there's been a lot of proposals and a lot of pleading to not cut. So we'll see what happens. We just don't know. I apologize. We just don't know.
Dr. Ellis, I've had some conversation with some principals, and it's almost a double-edged sword with the funding cuts that's being proposed by the governor and teacher retirement. You can't have one without the other almost. Can you address teacher retirement and what the forecast is? As we just met with Western Kentucky University, they're seeing a drastic decrease in student enrolling in the field of teacher ed. So what's the forecast, or what do we need to accept as educators to help support teacher retirement for the future?
Another loaded question. Yeah, so there's a lot of negative impact on that. I had to, or I was appointed, to serve on the teacher retirement task force, and it was very tedious and a lot of details, and the recommendations that even came out of that committee were not narrowed down to one thing, but there were many things because it was such a heated discussion, as you can probably imagine, even with professionals who were in there to forecast the sustainability of our retirement system, as well as the commitment that was made by the legislature, and had that been fulfilled or had that not been fulfilled, the impact of the recession in 2008. I mean, there were lots of variables that I think many of us, me included, were not even thinking about, and to put that in that realm. I know that our legislators are very adamant about having to remedy what has been some would say overlooked or the need to address this, but you know, when you have to fulfill the deficit for the teacher retirement, the money has to come from somewhere. So I think that's going to be a big player in the budget when they decide. And you know, one of the things that was expressed to our legislators during that task force by multiple teachers and principals and superintendents of all experience is the importance for the legislators to understand the debt that many of our teachers walk out of school with, and then not feeling like that their KTRS was going to be there was stressing them out. One young teacher in particular said that she would be paying off her loans her 38th year of teaching, 28th year of teaching, and she would stay for 30 years. And so she was worried about having the ability to save additional dollars. So there were lots of different stories about that if the pay wasn't as competitive in Kentucky, the retirement system was very appealing because it was a much better system set up than many other states. And so I think I think it's going to be a major focus. I know the governor has mentioned it and wanting to fund what has been obligated, but that's going to take some real wiggle room. And I think if we don't have a good solution and seeing that support in the budget, it is going to impact our teaching field. And we certainly don't want that to happen, especially in some areas that we desperately need and teachers and high quality those and compensate them for all their hard work. So I do think it's going to play a big piece in the budget. I think it's going to be some give and take, though, because that money doesn't just come out of thin air. It's going to have to take from other things. And so, but I do think it's getting the attention that it needs. And at least that's the impression that we're getting, and have had that since January when actually before that when Governor Beshear assigned the task force of making it a priority. So we are definitely hearing a lot about it and feeling like that they see the sense of urgency and not wanting to lose the teaching field in Kentucky.
Dr. Ellis?
We're not able to hear you. Can you say that again?
Yes, Dr. Ellis, looking at some questions and I'm reading some questions that have been generated by our group. What is the forecast for Kentucky academic standards in regards to science, social studies? We assume that math, ELA may be consistent, but what's the future for the Kentucky Academic Core standards?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Karen, and I think I can address that. We have been working, and we actually have had teacher groups that it also included higher ed already responding to the Kentucky Core Academic Standards to revise the English Language Arts and Mathematics standards based on the feedback that was gained between 2014 and 2015 on the Kentucky Core Academic Standards challenge process. So those recommendations are in place, and what we're doing is getting ready to launch another online public portal so that everybody will be able to see those recommended changes. If you also remember, if you heard Dr. Pruitt talking, he committed to looking into cursive handwriting standards, making those, while it's always been an option for local districts to include that in their curriculum, actually putting some in place. So we're working on that as well. We've gone into the ELA and math standards because they've been in place now for almost 6 years. And that is the recommendation as a general time period for reviewing standards anyway, every 5 to 7 years. As you know, we just adopted the science standards 2 years ago, or actually had to start putting them in place 2 years ago. So the science standards are set. They would be set at least for another 4 years before they would come under review. The social studies standards have been drafted, as you're aware, and we have all of those draft materials based on 2 rounds of public comment and feedback and key groups of Kentucky educators working on those revisions. And in fact, one of the only comments that was very consistent was teachers would like additional supports with curriculum development, translating those standards into curriculum. And so, in fact, the teams of teacher leaders that were working on the standards development process have put together a curriculum considerations document that goes along, which basically provides concrete examples of how to translate those standards into practice. So when Dr. Pruitt came on board, one of the first priorities he said was he wanted to learn as much as he could about where we were in all of these processes, and to be able to look closely at these proposed standards so that he could support or recommend next steps for them. And so he's engaged in that right now. We have provided him all of the feedback that has come around the social studies standards. So I think as soon as he can get a little bit more time to breathe, then he'll be ready to take that on. But you can expect to see us moving forward again with the English language arts and mathematics. I would anticipate us being able to move that forward throughout the summer even. And then I think that takes us through all 4 core areas. That would leave social studies to be the next set of standards we would want to address. And then again, we would have a few years for science to revisit those for any recommended changes.
We have Keith from Ohio County.
I have a quick question about RTA, the Read to Achieve grants. There's a proposed $800,000 cut or less for Read to Achieve. That affects 17 grants. And when will we know? I know this all proposed, but when will we know which schools are no longer going to be receiving those grants? And if KDE has the funds for the 2017 fiscal year ready for the school districts for next year for the final third year of the grant.
So I just want to make sure I could hear you. So you were asking about the RTA grants and if the proposed budget goes through, the cut in those grants. Is that what you're asking? I want to make sure.
Correct.
Okay. Yes. So again, like I said, we want to avoid that as much as possible because the RTA grants and the Math Achievement Fund grants are direct impact to schools, teachers, and students. And so our goal would be to completely or do our very best to completely hold that harmless so we don't impact 17 schools not having their intervention teacher or not fulfilling that third year agreement. And so it is our goal to keep that a priority because that is a direct impact on student learning and opportunity. And so that's something that we are not looking, to cut. Now, if the budget comes through differently and they require us to, we're going to have to really refocus our attention on the funds that we do have. But right now, if we were asked to cut that is not one of the priority areas because we understand the impact. We actually just did a presentation also. Our contract many of our contracts are often pulled just to be reviewed, and the legislators asked the impact of it. And so we were able to share that we actually service 321 schools with RTA, and obviously a couple thousand kids or more, and more in line that need to be serviced. And so we really emphasized the need, and they were actually very supportive of RTA and were familiar with the grant. And so I would hope, I can't tell you what they're going to do because I really don't know, but our goal is not to cut anything that is a direct impact to students, and that is a valuable grant and something that's been ongoing, and we're constantly working to improve that. So we're not anticipating that. If that's the case, we're going to have to realign and see what we can offer, because many of our funds that are aligned to us are legislative dollars, and so and then we are the stewards of that. So we've got to figure out at that point what we would do, whether that would be less money per school or what it would be. I just don't know, because we're really anticipating and hoping that that's not going to be the case, and that's not our number one area to really look at to cut when it's a direct impact on students.
Dr. Ellis, we have Mr. Brian Lyle from Muhlenberg County. He's got a question in regards to PGES.
Okay.
Dr. Ellis, there's a lot of discussion around PGES. Can you discuss the future and or possible changes we may see with PGES?
So with that, again, the changes we don't see. I mean, if Senate Bill 1 were to go through, there's a lot of question on the language around the system versus the framework that is discussed in Senate Bill 1, but again, that's proposed and it's only been through the Senate. With ESSA, they do have some flexibility on federal reporting and gives us flexibility on student growth. And so that to us, just having some flexibility, we are definitely going to put that on our agenda for our steering committee, which, as you probably are aware, are made up of teachers and principals and central office staff that make recommendations for policy changes on that. And so that is one of our areas that we plan to discuss actually in March. Whether Senate Bill 1 goes through or not, ESSA does give us some flexibility. The system itself, we don't see going anywhere, but definitely to tweak and refine. Some of our areas, we are definitely open to that. But the feedback we continue to get through our focus groups is don't overhaul, just tweak and make some things better and specific to student growth, and we understand that completely. And so that's something that will probably be discussed further in March. But once we have the regulations from ESSA, which will come in the fall, then that will give us some more guidance on what to do to move forward with our own state policy pending Senate Bill 1 as well. So definitely see some possible upgrades or refinement, but overhaul, no.
Miss Jenny Hester from Southport.
Good morning, Dr. Ellis. Could you speak for a moment about how Senate Bill 1 proposals may impact the proposed budget reductions that we have been looking at this morning.
Well, I hope that you guys have, I know that you're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best and trying to figure it all out as you go through, and we're doing the same. The thing that you need to remember with Senate Bill 1 is it puts a lot of local control back into, or a lot of control, back into the local district's hands. And at the same time, there's proposed budget cuts. And so that's going to be very different for every district and the capacities in which every district has, whether you're large or small. And so that's going to, if the proposed budget were to go through and put a lot of the control back into the districts on several of the items that are mentioned in Senate Bill 1, that's going to cause, I would say, the districts to have to kind of realign and rethink the human resources and the fiscal resources of how to use those dollars to fulfill the expectations. If Senate Bill 1 were to go through, KDE serves as what we do now, but more technical assistance, because if there's not unified systems in some of the aspects of Senate Bill 1, we would only be able to provide what the district's asking for to a certain extent. So a lot of the responsibility would go back to the district on fulfilling a lot of those requirements. So we just don't know. I mean, that's the thing is, when you're proposing something to have more local control and a budget cut, that as a former administrator, it gives me a little bit of the cold chills to think about it, what that would look like. And it depends on every school district, and every setting is very unique. And so, it's something to be thinking about. I wouldn't panic over anything because nothing has been decided at this point, but be thinking about what that would look like and what that would mean for your school and your setting, I think, is a wise thing to do. But we don't know at this point, and I know you hate to hear that answer, and it's just as unsettling for us here in Frankfort, but it's just truth. And so I think you have to prepare and maybe even figure out priorities too, which is easier said than done when you're on limited budgets and a lot of expectations. And so we understand that completely. But I think that's the reality of the possibility of the proposed budget and the Senate Bill 1 that's already accepted, or it has been voted on in the Senate and approved by the Senate. So,
Dr. Ellis, as we go back and start to review our standards and assessments, is there any plan to, as students take assessments, to give a more diagnostic feedback, whether that's based on standards? We get a rating of distinguished, proficient, novice, apprentice, and we really don't get a lot of information back that can impact our instruction. Are kids struggling with standards 7.2, 7.3? Is there any discussion to address that need?
I can take that. This is Karen again, and we have been working for about the past year and a half, maybe a little more, with a thinking partner to develop a model, if you will, for a next generation assessment and accountability system. We're starting with science, and the thinking behind that is because every assessment, as you know, has trade-offs in terms of the purpose it was designed for, and then therefore the legitimate or defensible uses that it can be used for. And so what we're doing with science is proposing an entire system so that there would be what we're calling big A and little a accountability components to it, so that we do meet the needs of those various purposes, as well as the information needed by different users for different uses. So what a superintendent may need, for example, in terms of reporting and feedback about how students are doing, is quite different than what the classroom teacher could benefit from, and still yet different from what teachers or from parents and students could benefit from. So we're working right now to build that system. We're hoping that in the March ISLN meetings across all of our regions, that we will be able to share with everybody kind of the blueprint for that system for science, and get some reactions. And then what we also hope to do is ideally, and of course that depends on all these ifs that we've been talking about all morning, if the budget allows, if we have the authority and the responsibility to create such a system, just a lot of factors, but we see starting with science as also creating a blueprint for what we would want to do across the board for English language arts, for mathematics, for social studies, and for science, so that the different needs of the different users of an assessment and accountability system could actually be met.
Any additional questions? Dr. Ellis, Robin, Karen, thank you so much for joining us here at GRREC today. We look forward to seeing what the budget and what the new mandates for the state and on the federal level are going to be. But we appreciate your all's efforts in joining us through Skype, and we look forward to maybe doing this in the future.
That would be great. Thank you for having us, and thank you for the questions. And I wish we had more definitive answers on a lot of them. It's just a time of change in Kentucky, and so be resilient. I know you have the hardest jobs around, and I respect that. Hopefully we can meet face-to-face next time, but thank you for having us, and I hope your Friday is highly productive with your group of leaders today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.